Hello all and welcome to my newest and first video update of 2024 on breeding finches and softbills in my large outdoor bird aviary. I'm thrilled to share the latest development and insights with you. This year is off to a fantastic start, especially as we've just reached an incredible milestone, 1 million followers across all our media channels. Of course, we'll take a detour to the large aviary with budgies, chickens, cockatoos and other interesting birds. And this time I'll also tell you a bit about how I clean up the large aviary and how I disinfect it and make sure there's not too many bugs. Also, it's very important that you remind yourself to disinfect the area sometimes when you have many birds in small places. But all this will come later. First, we will take a look at the bird. And thank you so much for your amazing support. Let's dive into the fascinating world of finches and softbills together. The breeding of 2024 have been a bit different than usually. Mostly because I this year have begun the breeding indoor. Lots of especially the Australian finches prefer to breed during the European winter. Despite this, I've sometimes tried to delay this breeding until the birds were moved outdoor to have most as possible breeding outdoor. Listening more to the natural behaviour of the birds have already increased the numbers of especially Guardian finch chicks. Later today I come back to some more information on the mutations I'm trying to breed right now. Also, I've been very lucky to breed, among others, the bronze munia and the black and white munia indoor. So I've just moved out a lot of these in some small groups to see how that works in the outdoor aviary. Also, I've had indoor success with parrot finches, red-headed finch, and I could almost say, of course, Budgies, canary birds and society finches, which I still find very fun to breed. Another thing I tried to change this year in the outdoor aviary breeding was a delay in the providing of insects and an increase in the providing of natural fruits for the softbills. For several years I had problems with the softbills, both the bearded reedlings, the Peking robins, some of the cardinals, that they began to breed too early, and actually the eggs were sometimes destroyed by late frost in the spring months. Also, this have destroyed eggs with several of the reavers. But this year I actually succeeded in delaying the breeding with roughly 1 month. So many of the softbills only began to breed within the few last weeks, meaning that just as I take this video, we have several chicks in the nests or softbills on eggs. I look very much forward to seeing how the result will change this year when we come to the autumn. As you can see here, I still find it very important to provide food for the birds throughout the aviary. In fact, I feed at least 4 different places in this aviary to make sure that all the birds, with no regard to which territory they may establish, can find food at any time and also can find all the different kind of food they need. Especially when providing frozen and alive insects, feeding different places throughout the aviary and even hiding the food some places will provide for some activity for the birds, but also ensure that birds with chicks doesn't find all the food at one time, which for some bird species, for instance the red-headed finch, can in some cases lead to the parents throwing out the chicks, because the chicks, when they are completely full and doesn't show any sign of hunger, will stop displaying the behavior of healthy chicks, and the parents will throw them out because they think they are sick. Just here you see the large structure of a nest from the Sudan golden sparrow. It has also built it up in this nest box. Actually, it's a species I have had huge success with the last couple of years. And it seems the larger the flock gets, the more easy it is to breed them. In the wild, this bird lives in Africa in extremely large colonies of as many as 65,000 nests, so the double of birds. So if my colony of this bird keeps increasing, I may need a larger aviary very soon. Another of my species that thrives in flocks is the yellow-crowned bishop, a weaver bird, also from Africa. Like the golden sparrow, it feeds mainly on seeds outside of breeding season and mainly on insects during breeding season. But contrary to the golden sparrow, the bishop does not breed in one large colony. In my aviary, the bishop males have divided the aviary into several different smaller territories where they build from 3 to 5 or 6 small nests and try to compete to get the females to come and use their nests when laying their eggs. For me, this is an extremely fun behavior to watch when each of these males show their own behavior and try to impress the females to come and live within their own territory. Overall, I really recommend you to try either one of the species or both, the bishops and the Sudan golden sparrows, if you have the room to have them in large flocks. It is very fun to watch. They are both very hardy birds, but also very easy to keep. Just remember that they need lots of insects during the breeding season. I keep both species outdoor all year. In general, most of the finches I keep in the large aviary are birds that's suited to be in a community aviary, meaning birds which in nature thrives in large flocks, also cross species. Besides the many finch species, I also keep lots of softbills in the aviary. When choosing which softbills to put into the aviary, I have several criteria I go for. First of all, I need to be sure that they don't attack the smaller birds, which again includes that they don't prey on the small birds, eggs or chicks, which some larger softbills do. In general, it's very important to choose species that are known for their peaceful and non-aggressive nature. Good example of such includes the white eyes, several species, the peking robins, and some of the bilbills. And remember, depending on the size of your aviary, you can sometimes go large, like some of the toragos, as I have the white-cheeked toragos, which is very peaceful towards the small birds. Another thing to look into is the diet. Softbills typically eat fruits, insects, and sometimes nectar, which complements the seed-based diet of finches without causing competition for the food. You should also keep in mind that softbills are active flyers and need plenty of room to move around, also more room than most of the finches. You need to ensure that your aviary is spacious enough to accommodate their flight needs while providing enough perches and hiding spots for all the other birds. And a final advice when thinking about mixing softbills with finches is always to monitor your aviary regularly. Watch for any signs of stress or aggression between the birds. Every bird is unique, so it's important to make adjustments as needed to maintain a harmonious environment. And with regards to creating a good environment, I have long thought about making a small pond inside the aviary, but decided not to do it as it is impossible to control the water quality for the drinking of the birds. Nevertheless, I still wanted to add more of the great sound provided by running water, but also, and more importantly, I wanted to attract even more of the insects for the aviary and the breeding birds, as is possible when you have a large pond near to the aviary. Further, I just installed, as you saw in this video, a very long drip line hose, providing water dripping slowly throughout the entire aviary for dry season periods. This again attracts lots of insects, but also it provides for lots of sprouts, grass and other plants flowering throughout the aviary as I keep inserting new plants and throwing seeds around the ground. This is something all the bird species enjoy, but especially the ground birds, as these crested partridge, also known as rul or the king quails, which really enjoy picking at all the sprouting seeds and insects attracted by the water. And right now in the video you can see a pair of crested partridge. As the name suggests, these birds are known for the very distinctive crest of feathers on the head of the male, as you see here. These are very social birds that often live in pairs or small groups. They enjoy interacting with each other and engage in various social behaviors such as preening, grooming and vocalization. And it's actually a bird that really gives a joy to have in the aviary. They only fly to the perches in the aviary when they have to sleep during the night, otherwise they are only ground birds. They are also very peaceful birds and I've never seen them do anything towards other birds in the aviary. They eat a wide variety of foods. In addition to seeds and insects, they also consume fruits, berries, small roots, or even sometimes small reptiles if they can find them. I keep 3 different species of doves in the aviary: the diamond dove, the Namakua dove, and the Luzon bleeding heart. The largest of these species is the Luzon bleeding heart dove, which also spends most of its time on the ground, compared to both the Namakua and the diamond dove. But also in nutrition, the Luzon bleeding heart is different from the 2 smallest, as it is more like a soft-billed bird, eating lots of fruits and insects throughout the year. I would say that all 3 species are quite peaceful, but I have seen sometimes the bleeding hearts chasing the crested partridge around on the ground, and sometimes even making them fly to the perches. The diamond dove is native to Australia and is by far the easiest of the 3 species to breed. The Namakua dove is both more rare in captivity, but also harder to breed, though it still takes mostly seeds and only small amounts of insects while breeding. The Luzon bleeding heart dove is native to the Luzon Island in the Philippines. It takes much more insects and fruits, and together with its more shy nature, it makes it much more difficult to breed than the smaller pigeons or doves. The bleeding heart doves are endangered in the wild, unfortunately, but luckily in captivity, several breeders have done a huge effort to breed these birds. In this way, the bird breeders are helping to preserve this endangered species and making sure that the bird is slowly getting more and more normal in captivity. I really think it's fun to keep doves in the large community aviaries, but before you go out and acquire some different dove species, you need to look into what the specific behaviors are, because some of these doves are quite aggressive during breeding and can really hurt your other birds. So take care unless you go for some of the species I've just been through. I keep mentioning it, but it is really important when keeping birds like this in a large community bird aviary that you study each bird species before you plump them into the rest of the group. It's true, as with many other things, that if you don't do your homework, you risk ending up with a very bad experience instead of the joyful bird keeping as I have here, and I'm trying to show to you, because it's so fun if you do it the right way. As you can see in many of my videos, I make a huge effort to provide lots of different foods for the birds. And that's one of the great things in keeping the birds in a community aviary, that the different species need different food. This is from Facetelaga, Nutribird, tropical fruit pate. And it is very fun to notice that this product in particular is something I bought for the softbills, but throughout the years, this has become one of my most preferred supplements for all my bird species, especially during the breeding. Besides lots of foods, it contains lots of different nutrients. But what makes me like this product is I can see that it actually works. It is really preferred by many different bird species, from the softbills, of course, where the largest as turagos, but also the smallest as white-eyes and Peking robin have this as one of their basic foods. It's even more interesting to notice that most of my finches take this as a large supplement during the breeding season and when rearing their chicks. Besides seeds, it seems that this product is the main food chosen by both my Gullian finches and several different Muniers, canary birds and goldfinches when they have reared their chicks this season. I'm truly very lucky to be sponsored by Facetelaga and Nutribird. As you can see in this video, the Namakua dove is one of the few dove species which actually shows clear differences in the plumage between the males and the females. The males are particularly distinctive with their black face, throat and chest, while the females are more subdued in color, lacking the black markings. Chick you can see in this picture is the first time breeding for me of the Namakua dove, so I'm off to a very good start with this species. If you keep this species in large aviary, the Namakua doves are actually known for their graceful flight and their habit of flicking their long tails up and down while perched. Outside the breeding season, These doves can often be seen in small flocks in the nature, and they are generally peaceful and coexist well with other bird species. But also during breeding season, several breeders of the Namakua dove keep these in flocks, which goes quite well. So to keep them in pairs or in flocks, it is always a matter of studying your birds and noticing how they thrive the best. When you are talking about the health of your birds, it's often forgotten that you also need to cut their nails, or at least check if they need to be cut. Overgrown nails can cause your birds to have difficulty perching, which again can lead to food injuries or infections. It can also affect the bird's ability to climb around and move around the aviary as they want to. In fact, long nails can be particularly dangerous as they can get caught in nesting materials or plants in the outdoor aviary. They can even unintentionally carry chicks or eggs out of the nest, which can be very harmful to the chicks or the eggs, of course. This is a huge problem for birds in small cages since they don't wear down their nails as naturally as they do in larger outdoor aviaries or in their nature itself. Please note that this can be a significant problem for especially many of our Munia bird species that in the wild spend lots of time in tall grasses and similar environments. On the other side, we can easily avoid these problems by adding lots of the correct materials to the aviary, as lots of stones they can jump to or tall grasses or bamboos. One of the smallest birds I have in the aviary these days is the red siskin. I keep 3 males and 2 females, which goes without any problems. The small size makes them very agile flyers and they're very interesting to watch. Even though the red siskins are native to northern South America, they also thrive in our Danish weather conditions, and actually I keep them outdoor all year. They're very hardy small birds. Even when I turn on the infrared heating lamps during winter, I have never seen the red siskins go for the heat. They prefer to stay outdoor, high on a perch, no matter the weather. Like the Gullian finches, also the red siskins is a very endangered species in the wild. Nevertheless, in Europe, these birds are very common in areas and cages, and they are bred very often, which means we have a steady supply of birds that have been bred in generations in captivity. A fun fact is that the red siskin in Venezuela is a symbol of national pride and is featured in various cultural references. And now we will take a short detour to my aviary with chickens, cockatoos, budgies, some starlings and several lovebirds. Also, this area holds some Java sparrows and 2 pairs of village weavers. The village weaver is a fantastic bird species, very interesting to watch, but they're very hard towards the plants in the aviary when they want to build their nests. Last year I moved them away from the green large aviaries because of their destructive behavior, but already I'm thinking about moving them back because I really miss their behavior and the nest building in the large aviaries. I've been asked many times if I don't have problems between the chickens and the budgies, and on the other side between the budgies and the finches, such as the Java sparrows. With regards to problems between the budgies and the chickens, I sometimes see small issues, but it often relates to specific chickens, so I had to remove a few chickens for that reason, but now I don't see any problems. The budgies are very calm going around between the chickens, and the chickens very rarely do anything toward the budgies. Even small fledglings of the budgies can go around between the chickens without any problems. But before you try to do the same, I would really caution you and say you need to be very cautious when opening up for an attempt like this. It's not something you just do, and you need to take lots of precautions the first time you put the birds together. It is natural behavior for the chickens to start chasing small birds if they suddenly fall to the ground in front of them, and they are not used to having small birds in the aviary. But when slowly adapting, you can keep them, as I do, without any problems. And the other way around, with the budgies being destructive towards small birds, you have to be cautious as well. I only put larger finches or weavers inside the aviary with the budgies, because if the finches doesn't have a good size and are able to defend themselves towards the budgies are very hard towards small birds and will easily pick them in the legs and hurt them very badly. Budgies can also be very hard towards nest eggs and chicks in the nest, especially of smaller finches. So for instance, I would never have a pair of Gouldian finches with a flock of budgies, as it would go very bad. In my opinion, the same would go for the beautiful star finches, as you see here. So it's all a matter of understanding the birds, their specific needs, and how they interact between each other. And for the exact same reasons, I would never put a pair of budgies inside my large green aviary with all the finches, as they would destroy both plants and nests. As you may have seen in the videos from last year, I had a large flock of jumbo zebra finches in my large aviary. I only started with 2 or 3 pairs, but throughout the summer I ended up with having more than, I think, 40 zebra finches. I really love this little bird and its behavior, especially in a flock, so I had very mixed feelings about what to do this year. But finally I decided to sell off most of the chicks and got back to only 3 pairs again. But actually I like the big flocks of the zebra finches, including all their chicks, so I wanted to try it again this year. Interesting to see how it goes, but when zebra finches in flocks, you need to be aware that they can be aggressive towards smaller birds and take up their nests. So as always, remember to have lots and lots of nesting places, especially if you keep lots of different bird species together in the same area. This year I also chose to keep several of my canary birds, also with the intent of using those as foster parents for the goldfinches, which last year threw out most of their chicks. A bird almost similar to the size of the canary birds is this beautiful diamond firetail finch. These birds are very social birds. They are primarily seed eaters with a preference for grass seeds. In the wild they forage on the ground for a variety of grass seeds and occasionally supplement their diet with small insects and fruits if offered. These birds tend to build a much larger nest than many of the other finches we keep. I have pairs using both bamboo nests, sometimes the wooden nest boxes for budgies, but often they construct nests inside dense shrubs or grassy vegetations made of grass, twigs and other plant materials. Like the Gouldian finch, it originates from Australia, but contrary to the Gouldian finch, the diamond firetail finch is a more aggressive species and it can be a bit violent towards smaller birds. But again, and as mentioned many times, it all depends on the specific birds, but also the number of nesting places provided, the size of the aviary or cage in which they are kept. This is not a species I would recommend to have in smaller cages with other species. The diamond firetail finch is a very hardy species, contrary to the cordon bleu, as you see here, and the Gouldian finches, and it can be kept outdoor all year. And turning towards the Gouldian finches, which I try to keep indoors during the winter, I've already had huge success breeding these during this season. One of my small projects I'm playing with these days on the Gouldian finches is to make some specific color mutations. As a fun thing, in the nature you have 3 different head colors on the Gouldian finch. You have the most common black-headed, the most rare, the orange-headed, and in the middle, the red-headed Gouldian finch. In captivity, many different mutations have been bred, so still with the 3 natural head colors, we are able to change the color on the breast and on the back. I'm trying to pair up a red-headed blue female, and as you see here, a red-headed, yellow-backed and white-breasted male. In first generation, all the chicks will have a purple breast, but would be split for white breast. All the female chicks will be yellow color mutation, and all the male chicks will be single factor yellow, also known as dilute. And now it becomes a bit more complicated, because when crossing these chicks, the next generation of chicks will have a lot more color variations. In fact, we would be able to see 36 different kind of color mutations, including the very beautiful white-breasted silver mutation. Whether keeping your birds indoor or outdoor, it's important to keep the aviary or the cage clean at all times. Nevertheless, I don't feel that our animals need to live in a more or less sterile climate or setup. Basically, the animals are used to dirt, where they live in the nature as well, so they can take lots of bacteria without any problems. The issue with our bird keeping is that we put many birds together, and in that way we risk the bird's life and health when you have older birds or young birds that are not fully hardy to the bacteria yet. How I do it is to remove the dirt layers, places where they shit a lot, where they sleep at night or spend much time during the day, like this place. I have removed the top centimeters here, and then I will disinfect the ground with a spray, and I will also use another spray against bugs. I will not do this in the entire aviary, but all the specific places where I feed a lot or where I know there are lots of droppings. Also, once or twice a year, I will spray the nests so the nest don't contain too many bugs, which will harm the chicks. A few times during the summer, again, I will put some medicine in the water for all the birds, which will kill all worms and insects they have in their feathers. Basically, it's much easier to try to prevent sickness than it is to heal your birds. When I've removed a layer of dirt some places, I will add new dirt from outside the aviary, or simply take some baggage of sand with lots of calcium and other interesting stuff in, prepared for birds, and replace. You should also remember to clean where you provide food and fresh water. Always use a bird-safe disinfectant and make sure you follow the instructions carefully. A clean aviary ensures that your birds have a healthy and safe home where they can thrive and be happy. Well folks, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more tips and advice on caring for your birds. And if you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to leave a comment. Thank you so much. Bye bye.